This is the New York City FC pregame live. Today, New York City FC open up the 2023 regular season against Nashville SC. And now, here are your hosts, Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
Yeah, and there we are. 2023. What do you say? 9th season for New York City FC, and we're here to bring you another year on the New York City FC network, radio, digital stream, and that all begins at 3:30 local, 4:30 Eastern time with our pregame show with the head coach, Nick Cushing, who you're going to see here on our pregame live with a couple of clips as well. And I do want to apologize. I got some notes, people wondering why we are starting the pregame live 30 minutes into the game, because when I scheduled this, I forgot we were in Central Time. So when it was put out there on social media, it may have had the wrong time Eastern. So apologies, Matt. You know, this is what happens when you move around the country.
Well, and what happens when it's your first game of the season as well, Glenn. We're a little bit rusty, let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, rusty, but it's we're in a cool spot.
Yes, we are.
We're in a cool spot. Let me just I'm gonna do my best to show you Geodis here. Let's see if I can add it. There we go. And so Geodis Park. This is they did play here. Let's see. Let me mute this guy. There you go. They played all their home games here last year, Matty, but they didn't start until 8 games into the season. Their first 8 games were on the road. But it's a beautiful facility. It holds 30,000, which is the highest figure for an MLS soccer-specific stadium. So it seems like a proper venue, and we know New York City traveling operations are here kind of looking at it closely, too, as New York City has had the good news announcing that, there'll be a stadium in Queens, New York in the not-too-distant future. But that's what you do now. You start evaluating things, right?
Absolutely, and it takes a long time as well. Obviously, we know that, we assume the stadium will be opening up in 2027. But, you want to move around the country and check out new venues. And this is one of the better soccer-specific venues in the country, that's for certain. It's a beautiful facility, and we know that they're working on the infrastructure around as well. So I think in 12 to 18 months' time, this place will be even better as well. Maybe not the stadium per se, but certainly what's going on around the outside of the stadium.
The corners of the stadiums, they have different eating areas and drinking areas because people tend to do that at sporting events. Here we are. We're a little chilly. Matty, I got it. Before we get into it, in cleaning out, my wife and I, we did a lot of cleaning, in the off season, got into the basement, and I purchased this in Reykjavik, Iceland, when I was recruiting there for my Rutgers team, and I completely had forgotten about it. It's beautiful, but it's very warm. It's appropriate for what we've got here in Nashville, Tennessee. You would expect warmer weather, but we don't have it.
Yeah, you look incredibly warm, I must admit, Glenn. And you're right. What was it? The day before we came on Thursday, it was 82 degrees. We landed yesterday, it was 52 degrees and raining. And today, I think it's even colder. And it rained all morning. But right now, it looks perfect for soccer. Maybe not for watching a game of soccer, but for down there to be playing on the field, on the pitch, it's absolutely perfect. It really is. There'll be a nice zip on the surface. Of course, the groundsmen have had all months long to figure out the pitch. The pitch looks absolutely immaculate.
It does. And one final Nashville note, halftime of our radio broadcast, we're going to welcome in a recording star here in the area. Her name is Grace Lear. She was an American Idol finalist a few years back during COVID. She played soccer and was captain of the Cal Berkeley team, coached by a friend of mine. He said, hey, there's this young lady who's a good player who went on and became this American Idol, and so I had her on my Sirius XM show. And then she's going to come on at halftime and bring her guitar supposedly. I hope she can find her way up here. and play a couple of songs.
Yeah, that'd be
How
awesome.
cool would that be?
We went out and experienced a little bit of Nashville Broadway nightlife last night. So
many people watching may have been to Tootsie's or Robert's before. We got in there last night. Yeah.
We got fully assimilated with all things Nashville, that's for certain. We haven't got that long here, but we're going to enjoy it, and we have enjoyed it so
we got a good night's sleep so we could prepare for you on this and on the broadcast. And at the top of the news list right now, the starting lineups are out.
Yep.
And Hani Mukhtar, who with goals and assists was a part of 65% of Nashville's goals a season ago, he will start the game on the bench. And we were just officially handed the starting lineups. And so without Mukhtar, Teal Bunbury, who has done quite well against New York City over the years, in particular when he was with the New England Revolution, he will start along with Randall Leal. Leal will be more underneath Bunbury, and that's the way Gary Smith, who signed a contract extension this week, so the head coach for Nashville, was rewarded for what is now their 4th season of existence in MLS, and they went to the playoffs all 3 years, their first 3 years. New York City FC, they've been to the playoffs 7 consecutive years, failed to get in their expansion season 2015, and they're coming off an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Now, the starting 11 for New York City is out, and we're going to roll it at the bottom here for you to see. But absent from the 11 and in the original plans for Nick Cushing, Alfredo Morales suffered some sort of knock in training yesterday. So he's on the bench. So if he's on the bench, I would imagine he's available, but maybe it might be in a situation where it would be more emergency that he comes in. But he's obviously not fit for 90 minutes. And that's difficult news for New York City because if there's anything going on right now, they lack depth.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you're not fit to start, then you're not really fit to play. That's for certain. And it will be an emergency situation, as you say. I've been in this position before when I've had a slight knock, and the manager would always start you. He'll start you in the game so that just in case you have to come off after 5 minutes, he can substitute you off. If you're a substitute, you substitute on for somebody, then you get injured after 5 minutes. That's 2 substitutions wasted almost. So, yeah, for me, this will be very much an emergency situation for Morales. And as you say, Glenn, it's the starting lineup is strong for NYCFC, but much further than that, it drops off very, very rapidly. That's being honest. I think most people would be honest with that, taking a look down at the bench, and that's not always being disparaging to the people on the bench. It's just the fact that the majority of those players on the bench are defenders. There's very little on there to affect the game, really. You look down there, Tony Alfaro, Kevin O'Toole, Molde Amundsen, Alfredo Morales himself, we know is an emergency situation or a defensive midfielder, Matt Freese as well. So there's very little there to have a positive effect if you are down a goal. But I think we know that. I think that the powers that be know that here at NYCFC, and I would imagine that there will be people coming in to help sooner rather than later. Well, obviously, I don't know that for a fact. That would just be my assumption.
Well, Nick Cushing alluded to that earlier this week with me in our interview, which will air in its entirety on the pregame show beginning at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. But the absences for New York City FC, Matty, are really the story. Now, 8 players who started in the Eastern Conference Final of Philadelphia have either departed or will not be part of the 11 today against Nashville. But among those gone, Sean Johnson, Anton Tinnerholm, Alexander Collins, Eber, Maxi Morales, and Nico Acevedo. And there was a lot of influence there, a lot up the spine. But here is Nick Cushing addressing that. And he also brought up one player that has come into the program who I think he's very high on, and he's starting at left back today, Brian Coufret. So here's Nick Cushing a little bit earlier this week.
Yeah, I think I can 100% confirm that we are going to strengthen our squad. That's been an ongoing process, and it's a complex process because of, one, the types of players that we want to bring in, those players that really fit the profiles of how we want to play. But also, it's not so simple in trying to get players of a really high level, and that's what we want to do. You know, most of the time when you want to bring a player, there are other teams that want to bring that player as well, and you have to go through the process. And one thing I can assure fans is between Brad Sims, David Lee, myself and the coaching staff, it's been a consistent process, the consistent communication around the types of players. I think the fans will be really excited by Brian Coufret. We wanted to bring in a left back that we felt would really improve our offensive game, but also improve our mentality. And I think the fans will be enthused by him. But there's a process in making sure you get the right guy. But of course, there will be players that will come into this squad over the next coming weeks that will not only give us depth, but will improve the level of our play.
So you anticipate players coming in before the summer?
The window for MLS is still open,
right.
And for me, and for Dave, and for Brad, and for all the guys here, the priority is to get these players as quick as possible. There is no strategy where we are waiting until a certain time so that we can do a certain thing. For us, it's about trying to do it as quick as possible, and that doesn't mean that they'll all come in 2 days. It's so complex that the denomination of players that we bring will come at the right time for the football club.
All right, there you have it from Nick Cushing, and bumping into him at the hotel, he reiterated that reinforcements are coming in at key positions and will upgrade the squad. And he also intimated that Matthias Pellegrini, who is going to start at the number 10, and this is how limited the roster is at the moment, he indicated that Pellegrini will have competition for that job next week. Now, he did not say this, but what we will assume is that negotiations with Santi Rodriguez continue, and Rodriguez could very well be back in the fold for New York City FC. That's not a guarantee, but sounds like that might be in the works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he is a player, obviously, that knows the club very well. The club knows him very well. It would make perfect sense. But as Nick Cushing himself just said there, the talks are complex. This is not just between NYCFC and Santi Rodriguez. We're talking about all round. It's
right.
Of course, other teams want them. Of course, there's wages involved. Of course, there's transfer fees involved. And ultimately, I think if you're going to bring players in, you want to bring players in who are going to go into the starting 11. I don't think you really want to bring in squad players just to boost the size of the squad. I think if you're going to bring a player in, you want him to fight for a starting jersey. Nobody's guaranteed a starting 11 spot, but you don't just want to bring somebody in to be number 15 or number 16 in the squad. You want them to be competing for that starting berth, and that's when it becomes difficult because those players are few and far between. Every team anywhere around the world wants to find a very good number 9, a good centre forward who scores goals. That's what every team everywhere wants, and Nashville will tell you the same thing. They've got a 33-year-old in 2 days in Teal Bunbury as their main striker. We all know him very well. Yes, he's an okay player, but I think they'd want an upgrade on that, and they haven't been able to find one as of yet. So he's there in the starting lineup. It doesn't mean he's not a good MLS player. I just think that Gary Smith and his coaching staff and Mike Jacobs, the GM, would want somebody maybe a little bit younger, a little bit fresher, and somebody a little bit better as well, with a better goal-scoring record. Those players are hard to find.
Well, one of the players that we talked about that is departed for New York City FC is Sean Johnson, who at 33 years old will be between the posts for Toronto FC this year. And that leaves the opening for a new starting goalkeeper, Luis Barraza. He's been sitting behind Sean Johnson really without any chance of competing for the number 1 position, but that has changed. And then New York City has also obtained Matt Freese from the Philadelphia Union. So it appears to be Cody Mizell still number 3. It appears to be between those two. Barraza will get the start today, and I asked Nick Cushing about his goalkeepers. Again, this is part of our pregame show coming up at 4:30 Eastern on the New York City FC Network.
So Luis Barraza will start against Nashville. But you said about a week ago that, it still is going to be – that's not going to dictate who will be the number 1 the rest of the way. So you still feel that way, and how will you make those determinations?
I think that is the natural thing to say, purely because neither player has a history to go on to say whether they are and where they're at in their goalkeeping life. We have huge belief in both of them. Really, really pleased and excited to bring Matt Freese here. But Luis Barraza has been here for 5 years, and has proved that he can go into the games, whether it be even under my tenure last year, Red Bull lost 3-1, didn't have a bad game, but then bounced straight back, went into the Atlas game and won the Campeones Cup in a huge game. And we saw last year as well when Sean went on international duty, Luis did a 4-5 game stretch. We believe he's ready, but we also believe that the competition will bring consistency in performance. Will Luis go the whole year? Maybe. Will Luis lose his shirt to Matt Fries? Maybe. Will they do a little bit of a hybrid of both? Because what you got to think is it's really, really difficult when you haven't played 20 games to have 20 really, really good games. We are going to have to support both goalkeepers. We're going to have to monitor it throughout. The one thing that we can guarantee is we believe in both of them.
Well, it's really perhaps the largest story surrounding New York City FC is the goalkeeper position, because it's never been a question who's been there. Sean Johnson wins MLS Cup MVP in 2021. And Luis Barraza, Nick Cushing referred to the games that he played while Sean was on international duty. That was in 2021. Last year, no MLS games for Luis. However, he played in 3 U.S. Open Cup games. And again, you heard Cushing allude to the 2-0 win over Atlas for the Campeones Cup. So that's a major event. It's a trophy. So he's gotten a little feel of it and perhaps has earned the opportunity to start the opener, and then we see where it goes from there.
I think that's a valid point. I think he has earned the right to wear the number 1 jersey today. Whether that's just today and not in the future, who knows? But I do think for any young goalkeeper who's inexperienced, both Fries and Barraza are, if you're going to put them in, you've got to give them a run of games. Unless there's something calamitous that happens and you drop 3 through your hands and they go into the back of the net and you lose 3-0, then you may need to reassess. But apart from that, I think you need to give a young goalkeeper a little run of games. And of course, nobody wants to lose a US international goalkeeper. You'd much rather have Sean Johnson here. But in a way, it's nice that there's 2 goalkeepers competing and there is a parity between the 2. This is a fair fight. You know, when Sean Johnson was in, he was so far ahead of Barraza or Cody Mizell. It wasn't a fair fight. Sean Johnson knew that. But Sean Johnson had the wherewithal and the experience to deal with knowing that he wasn't in a scrap. He knew that he was the guaranteed number 1, week in, week out. Even if he made a mistake, he knew he was straight back in the next week.
And Matt Fries had the same situation with Andre Blake at Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
And because he played 31 times for MLS Next Pro with 6 clean sheets, did Fries. And Barraza made a majority of his appearances also with MLS Next Pro. Not the same level, but it's experience. At least you're playing some games.
Yeah, and they both know they are in that fight. It is a dogfight for the number 1 jersey. I know Barraza's wearing the number 1. I think Matt Fries is wearing the number 49. What I think everybody realises when I say you've got that opportunity to grab the number 1 jersey, you know it means to be the goalkeeper, not specifically what is on your back. And I do like that. And I like the fact that Nick Cushing has laid it out very simply there. This is a fair fight. It's a clean slate. Prove to me that you're the best goalkeeper at this football club and you will get the start. Right now, Barraza's the man with the shirt and it's up to him to either keep it or to lose it, or up to Matt Fries maybe in training to prove that he is the man, or whenever NYCFC 2 played, that he is the man who should be there. I like that. I like the fact that there is the parity and that it is going to be a straight fight. Look, I'd still rather have Sean Johnson here. Don't get me wrong, any Sean Johnson fans out there, I would much rather have him here. But it will be interesting to see how this works out, how this fight does work out.
You have to change the guard at some point, and then there's the strategy of contracts and all the other things that go into it. But it'll be a big test for Barraza today. New York City has only played Nashville twice. Remember, Nashville was in the Western Conference last year after being in the East in their first 2 years of existence.
Yeah.
But they're back in the East now because of the emergence of St. Louis FC. But in Nashville in 2021, New York City got rocked 3-1. Yeah. Hani Mukhtar had a brace in that game. He's starting today on the bench because of a hip injury. Alfredo Morales also on the bench, so Justin Hack inserted into the starting 11 for New York City FC. We talked about how Nashville, in their first 3 years of existence, playoffs each year, and we've seen great progress. And the architect of this team, for the most part, is their general manager, Mike Jacobs. He's a New York guy, had him on my show. If you're a subscriber to Sirius XM FC, it was a really wonderful interview for the full hour of the show. And one player that he pointed to as far as bringing in players that are maybe undervalued is a guy that New York City FC fans are quite familiar with.
Alex Mule, from New York, and was a former New York Red Bulls homegrown. He's someone I've compared in some cases. The same Michael Lewis wrote the book Moneyball. He also wrote an article for the New York Times on Shane Battier, a former Dookie, and it was called the No Stats All-Star, and really talked about how tremendous value he had. Maybe it wasn't measured with the traditional statistics like points and rebounds and assists. And when we first acquired Alex, I kind of referred to him as MLS's version of the No Stats All-Star, because when we look at the points per game Red Bulls had with and without him, you look what's happened here in Nashville, the points per game for Nashville with and without him. I think he's one of these guys that maybe the things he does might not pass the eye test because he might not have a lot of goals or assists, but all it does is win all the time.
Now he'll be on the bench at the start today, but players like that, Matty, you've played with them. I've coached them. They just and that comparison to Shane Battier is pretty interesting if you'd watched him at all with Duke in college basketball. So we're just about set to get going, and really appreciate you taking the time to be with us for this pregame live. We'll do this before every New York City game, whether it's the regular season, whether it's Leagues Cup, whether it's the postseason, and so happy to just present and set the scene for you. Today it's at the Geodis Park. Let's take one more look at it before we break. It's a cool facility, 30,000 strong. They're expecting a sellout. It was raining heavily earlier in the day. You can tell it's overcast, but the rain has halted, and I would imagine it's going to be just a happy crowd here today, unless New York City starts scoring goals. Matty?
Let's hope for that. Let's hope for goals from the light blues and not from the black of Nashville today.
All right, 4:30 p.m. Eastern pregame show. The New York City FC Network, which is nycfc.com/radio. We're also on the air on Sirius XM FC. We'll be joined in progress. Palace is playing Liverpool. Do you have an update on that game?
I don't.
Okay. We'll look at it after. We've got a few minutes to prepare, and then we'll look at it. I'm Glenn Crooks. That's Matty Lawrence. Enjoy the game, everybody.